that when your grandmother was living with you, it's because your grandfather was already deceased, and then
Yes.
her son
Oh,
was
yes.
taking care of her.
Right,
So.
right.
And they had lived in Berlin, and had your father grown up in Berlin, or how'd they end up there?
My father was born in Borek in
We're
Poland.
not on yet.
Oh.
Well, it's now Poland. It was Posen at the time.
We're on?
Mhm.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't realize it. Sorry.
I like the idea that we were getting this extemporaneously, so.
No, that's okay. If you don't mind cutting.
Tell us a little bit about your father and mother's history.
I don't know much about my father before I was born. He was born in Posen, in Borek, Posen, and he came to Berlin when he was a child, I believe. But I don't know exactly when. My grandfather, I believe, was a school teacher. My mother, my grandmother, my grandfather was Berthold, after whom I'm named Heinz Berthold. Father was Sigmar. My grandmother was Henrietta. In fact, both my grandmothers were Henrietta. My father's mother was Henrietta Neustadt. My mother's mother was Henrietta Meyer. Now, George has put together a whole volume on the Meyer family. I've got a copy of that. Thick volume. I guess my grandfather came to Berlin to take up a teaching position, I would imagine. Could look up when he died, but it's not one of those things that's right at my fingertips. And I know very little about him really, and of course never met him. He was long dead when my grandmother lived with my father. And I guess they were close. I remember my mother telling me that he called his mother every day when they were on their honeymoon.
How did your parents meet, or
I really don't know.
what were some shared interests that they had? What did they like to do together?
Oh, I think my father had a good interest in literature and drama, and I think that is something that they shared. They enjoyed going to the theater and to concerts. I don't think either of them was very musical. Certainly, they probably were more musical than their children. I was never very musical, and I was a good deal better than my sister. Doesn't say much.
Where are some places that you liked to go together as a family
Well,
on weekends?
yes, weekends we'd get out very often with the Georges, my mother's youngest brother George, and his wife Tante Trude, and Eva, Dodi and Hilda. Dodi and I always paired off, and Hilda and Elsa, they were sort of, Hilda and Elsa were almost, they felt like twins, but the German word Zwilling, they weren't Zwillinge, they were Illinge, partial twins. And they still get together. We're on a cruise together. In fact, I joined them on a cruise not last summer, summer before last, in 2007. We usually go out for a walk through the Grunewald, or maybe a boat ride on the Wannsee, or to Potsdam. My father was very fond of Frederick the Great's castle, or palace I should say, sans souci, without worries, where he loved to entertain Voltaire and other intellectual people. Also, he loved to play, Frederick the Great loved to play the flute and had musical evenings there. But, he apparently was, as I understand it, was a fairly enlightened monarch.
Were there any favorite things that your family did together, or special holiday memories you have of any kind,
Well,
including
yes,
foods that go with them?
And in summer, we'd very often either go to Danzig and stay with my grandparents at Silberhütte, where we would be in the apartment of it was a two-flat. Upstairs was grandmother and grandfather, and I think they had a live-in help at that time already. Downstairs was Uncle Arthur, Tante Lena, Herbert, Franz, Rudi, and Kurt. We'd often spend the summer, part of the summer, in a suburb of Danzig, by the Baltic Sea, and a place called Zopot, Z-O-P-O-T, Zopot, where we'd play in the sand, walk along the beach, pick up some little bits of amber. What my sister in particular, Elsa, she loved to gather amber washed up on the Baltic Sea coast. The shells, but amber was the thing that we prized more than the shells. Of course, seagulls were quite prominent on the coast there. What we very often did was we would spend the summer in a German part of the Baltic, in Heringsdorf, which was the Isle of Usedom, right in front of Stettin, which is now Szczecin, or whatever the Poles call it, at the mouth of the river Oder. We'd very often spend the summer there, and Father would visit us on weekends. We'd have a room in a pension, which was sort of a family-style hotel, and spend the days on the beach and walking through the woods, gathering blueberries, maybe some wild strawberries, wild blueberries, wild strawberries, some mushrooms sometimes. Then quite a number of summers, I remember, we would take a boat from Swinemünde, which was the largest village on Usedom, to Zopot and Danzig. And I'd love to stand in the stern. Couldn't get on the bow, but I'd love to stand on the stern and watch the wake. Watch the wake behind the boat. We very often go overnight. I think it was an overnight trip, from sundown to landing in Danzig or Sopot. well, other kids that would be there. I think don't always very often have the Georges there. Sometimes, Support, of course, I'd meet with. We met with the Georges and Support sometimes. Of course, mother's other brothers' children, Heinrichs, Werner George, Sanne, and Pippi, and Pauls, Uschi, Brigitte, and Lilo, and Leo's, yes, Leo's, Marianne, Charlotte, and Martin. Don't remember ever seeing the Arthurs in Support so much. I remember those in their home in Danzig, below the apartment of my grandparents. My family, there was correction. And that last year, 1926, 27, was five grandchildren were born to my grandfather. Then there was myself as the youngest firstborn in February, then Hilda in May, then in 1927, between Hilda and me was Lilo on February 16th, just a week after me. She always sends me a birthday card that reminds me of sending her one. And then in 1927 there was Pippi from Heinrich, and Elsa was the very last one. So five of us in 15 months.
I'd like to skip ahead.
Mm-hmm.